making good, nutritious products that are very useful. We have probably the best sustainability story of any ingredient out there. We are definitely fit into the entire biocircular economy of the food chain, and nothing gets wasted. It all gets repurposed and reutilized.
Well, hello, this is Dennis Jewell, and I'm pleased to be here with Dr. Starkey this fine day. We're with the Pet Food Science Podcast, and we're going to talk about ingredients and animal product ingredients in pet food. And I'm pleased to have Dr. Starkey as an expert here to talk about it. I wonder if you could start, just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the position you're in today.
Of course, I went to school and studied mainly cattle and swine nutrition, and then in Arkansas, where I grew up with a cattle background, and then I went to Kansas State and got my PhD in swine, and we did a lot of poultry nutrition while I was there. Worked for DSM in the vitamin division for about 10 years. And then went to work for a rendering company, American Proteins, and got involved in regulatory rollouts and research and development of new products and things of that nature. And then I actually went into academia for about 8 years and at Auburn University, and had an opportunity to go back and work as the vice president for scientific and regulatory affairs for the North American Renderers Association. So it was a great opportunity, and just started that last December.
84 million times a day, pets eat meals with ingredients from Trow Nutrition. We bring together the science of ingredients, nutrition, and blending to unleash possibilities for pet food brands. Premixes are just the start. Turn to Trow for higher inclusion ingredients too, like proteins and carbohydrates, and highly sensitive ingredients like probiotics. With our palatants and base blends, you can feel confident about what comes in our bags and goes in yours. Learn more at TrowNutritionPets.com.
Well, I'm very pleased to have you to chat about this with us. Sounds like you've had a background that we can really learn from. One of the things so my background, of course, is using the products that we're going to talk about in pet nutrition. And one of the things people often sort of wonder about is, why are we using these products? And I think the thing that a pet nutritionist brings to the party is that these products are used for the value of the pet. And so we are most interested in providing nutritional excellence with the array of products that are available. And the interesting thing about pet nutrition is it really wants to have quality products that perhaps the human nutrition chain, at least in the U.S., isn't interested in consuming. And I wonder if you could just talk about that breakout as, you've got this live animal, if you will, coming through the system, and some parts are going for human consumption, others for pet consumption. And could you just talk about that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. Many years ago in several developed countries, we got, a little picky about what we chose, and muscle cuts are quite tasty and pretty nice. And so things like the variety meats, liver, heart, kidneys, other organs kind of fell to the wayside. And while they're still consumed in a lot of areas globally, we choose not to put them typically on menus in the U.S., even though you can find a few specialty restaurants where you can go have kidney or liver still, but it's pretty rare. So when you look at animal production and processing, the animals, at least in the U.S., are produced for those whole muscle cuts, and that's what we want on our menu typically. So in the case of poultry, you basically leave 30 to 35% of the animal unused. In the case of beef and swine, you're talking closer to 50, 55% of the animal unused. that product has to go somewhere. If we took that to a landfill, we would have landfills, every landfill in North America full in about 4 years, with some very dangerous disease vectors and things like that. So many years ago, we started rendering. Rendering's an ancient science. We used to render tallow for soaps and candles, and several millennia ago. But we started rendering these co-products and making very nutritious feed ingredients out of them. And when you cook, everything undergoes a chemical change. And so, as a fellow nutritionist, my interests are actually on what amino acids are left. Are those amino acids available to the animal? And when we talk about, not all pets are dogs and cats, but those are the majority. Cats are definitely obligate carnivores. Dogs are pretty omnivorous, but seem to prefer meat. And those ingredients that we process and basically rendering is cooking and dehydrating, they turn into protein meals that have a very complementary amino acid composition for the health and growth of the animal, and then high energy animal fats, which supply some saturated fats that animals need for growth and as well.
Well, it's interesting. I was on the AFCO nutrition subcommittee where we set the requirements for these nutrients you're discussing, and it's interesting to me that, first of all, animals need fat. That we don't sort of normally think of fat as an essential nutrient because we think of the fatty acids, but there's a benefit for fat in general, obviously, as you mentioned, for palatability, but also then for vitamin absorption, for energy provision. So there's really a value in fat. And then, of course, we think of the amino acids and proteins that we have, and we have both essential and non-essential amino acids. What do you do to kind of assure, the pet that it's getting, for us as a pet nutritionist, that's getting the amino acids that aren't unavailable, that by the time, we get them, that they actually can be used by the pet?
Right. There's a lot of tests done. Pepsin digestibility is done very often. It's an okay indicator. It's works well for spot checks. There are other assays that have been done historically, while not as frequently, but available lysine. The University of Missouri has a bioassay for available lysine that's not bound in a Maillard type reaction, as well as we do chick digestibility assays. I was involved with other students at K-State. We did a ton of those for a pet nutrition company, looking at amino acid digestibility using a chick model, and there's been swine models used as well. So those studies are all done, and if there's ever a question, a pet food company and a rendering company can go in together and get an assay done on a product, but that ensures that those amino acids are available for the animal to use and metabolize.
Well, that's a great thing for the pet, because I think what you're describing is a value to the pet, not to the ingredient line. And I admit, if you could say steak on an ingredient line, a lot of people would like to buy that product. But the pet actually doesn't care. The pet actually wants these nutrients that are contained in those ingredients for the value that it's perceiving as far as health and well-being and length of life and all those things we wish for our pets. I wonder, what do you think as you look at the market ahead? It appears that people want to eat meat, that there's going to be a continual demand for those cuts that you were talking. Do you see that kind of continuing? And if so, doesn't that mean we're going to have these products available, these high quality nutrition products available for pets?
Right. No, absolutely. If you look as countries develop, meat consumption per capita just increases dramatically. And even though, globally the economy is maybe down a little bit at the moment, typically what we see is meat still gets consumed. It's just the choice of species that changes. So you may increase poultry or egg, or if you're close to a waterway, fish, protein versus beef or pork during those times. But the per capita consumption tends to stay pretty similar. So as we move forward and more nations are getting more income and developing technologies, we see rendering increasing. As a matter of fact, here at with North American renderers, along with European colleagues in Brazil, which has a very robust rendering industry, we are actually working with other international countries to help them set up and develop rendering, and give them lessons learned and things, and hopefully they won't make the same mistakes in growing their industry that we have here. And so we're very active globally with several different countries on developing rendering across the globe. So as we increase production of animals, there's always going to be at least parts that tend not to get consumed. And what we've seen globally is as countries become more highly developed, there are taste choices more and more we choose not to put on our menu. And liver's a great example of that. And it's got great nutrition, vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, and protein, but a lot of people don't like the stronger flavor of it. And so even heart has a very different strong iron flavor to it. So these things will continue, I think, to drift over into animal food production. And if we look at, historically, everything we've done in the feed and pet food industry has come from co-products of something that was manufactured for human food. And wheat midds and wheat shorts and things like that wheat was grown to make flour. Soybeans have been grown mainly for crushing the oil out and utilizing the oil. And so soybean meal, which is another excellent protein source, is essentially a co-product. Distillers grains is another great example. So there's all kinds of co-products out there, both plant and animal derived, that can provide some good nutrition to both livestock and companion animals.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I just think we keep cycling through it, but I mentioned it as we go by that what I as a nutritionist want are a product that provides healthy ingredients for the pet. And it's interesting then as these co-products come out, if the whole ingredient stream is being strongly supported by human consumption, then of course I have these other products available that are less expensive. And of course, we don't make cheap pet food, as anyone will know if you're buying pet food these days. But it is made in a way that's done to benefit the pet and use these high quality ingredients that are not not being chosen by humans. So I wonder if you look at the species, do you see that? You mentioned it's kind of poultry and swine, beef, maybe some lamb or mutton. I don't know that market so well. Is that where most of these co-products are being made?
They do, and we do see a lot, especially with the growth of aquaculture. We're seeing more and more products.
Interesting.
Fish meals and shrimp meals and things like that with the growth of aquaculture. And again, if we cook these products properly, they chemically kind of break down, and then you're providing, more free amino acids. That the proteins typically denature during the cooking process. And, we cook at a temperature to try to ensure safety and the product's pathogen free at the end of that cooking step, just like you do when you manufacture your pet food. So I think we're going to see more avenues. Insects, protein is, and oils are becoming very popular in the press, and there's more and more people getting into that avenue. So, and then other things like algae and yeast proteins and things are becoming more prominent as well.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about those latter ones. I'm not familiar with insect proteins. It's certainly part of, like I said, there's a fair amount of publications coming out showing that they are an adequate, again, supply for the nutrients that the pet needs. And that's certainly an avenue that I think many will be interested in. When you do the rendering process, what's I guess for me, the thing that some people like the idea of really close to wild, and when you start talking about cooking these meats, it seems like it's pulling away from that. So just walk us through why do you want to cook these meats, and what's maybe a little bit about what's the outcome that you're hoping to get or you're achieving when you go through this process you're describing.
Right. Well, if you take home muscle cuts or organ meat or anything and you lay it out on your kitchen cabinet for a few days, it turns pretty quickly. As soon as, anything is the blood stops pumping through their system, decay starts to accelerate. There's enzymatic reactions. There's microflora that start to break down cell membranes and release other enzymes. And so because of the breakdown, you can get high oxidative, very negative oxidative ions produced. So by cooking it, we reduce, by cooking it quickly, we reduce the production of those high oxidative ions. And there's a good bit of literature that shows, we don't want those oxidative species to be fed to our animals because they actually do physiological harm at the gut level and start to damage gut integrity and things like that. So the whole reason we could use the cooking process is to really slow that rate of decay. And so we cook these materials. We end up with a dry protein powder that has a water activity low enough not to support any kind of pathogen growth or anything. And then the other side of that is we end up with the animal fats that we were told for a long time saturated fat was bad. And now the science is suggesting that may not be completely true. Like anything else in moderation, we probably need some of that. And so animals are the same way, I think. And it depends on the species. Cats, definitely carnivorous. They probably have metabolic pathways set up more to rely on animal-sourced materials. Not that you can't, if you supplement it correctly, you can't feed one otherwise with some plant material, but they are set up as carnivores. And dogs are pretty omnivorous. My hunting dogs go and they eat corn out of the deer feeder and everything else when they get a chance. So they just like to try different things all the time. And so, but because we feed these companion animals, we have to make sure the nutrients are present and available to be digested because that's the sole source of diet they're getting. As humans, we go and we select different items off the shelf and change our menu every day. Our companions don't have the ability to do that. So we have to ensure that we're putting all the nutrients they need in every single bite. And animal proteins and fats are good at supplying a lot of those, along with, vitamin mineral premixes and other things to formulate a nutritious diet.
Well, that makes lots of sense. What I hear you saying is you're really relying on this idea of complementation. So no one ingredient alone is the perfect food, but you can use multiple ingredients to complement each other to really get that, optimum, or I guess I don't know what is perfect, but optimum food anyway. I wonder, as we think about it, this interesting of oxidation, I recognize, I always tell people, we created fire for a reason, and that we needed healthy foods and fire and heat brings that along. And I've always thought, well, you kill the microbes and you make that water activity, come down so that the microbial growth is cut back. I hadn't thought about oxidation. And that sort of interests me. Reactive oxygen species are really harmful. I mean, the body uses everything, right? So it's not like you can just say, well, this is all bad. But fighting reactive oxidative species is a pretty common health requirement. So if you have a process where that's cut back in the ingredient, that makes lots of sense to me.
Yeah, basically just, cooking something quickly. I mean, we've all had something in the refrigerator that we left too long and it has spoiled or decayed and we have to dispose of it. It's the same with these materials. And, the materials that we process are about 70%, maybe closer to 60% water in the poultry. But they're high water. There's lots of enzymatic activity occurring to break down tissues. We've all got pathogens on our body and in our microbiome and or potential pathogens. We just, carry them at very low levels. But all that, cooking that product as quickly as we can will stop the rate of oxidation and breakdown from enzymatic reactions, and will stop making a lot of those reactive species that you discussed, as well as killing the potential pathogens present.
Well, that sounds great. I wonder, as we sort of think together about this, this is an industry that a lot of people don't know much about. It kind of supplies an ingredient that gets into then the product gets all the praise, right? I fed this food and my pet feels great, and nobody really, probably cares about that meat co-product that was there. I stumbled over the name because we got lots of different names. It might be called chicken or beef or something, or it might be a meal, chicken meal, a beef meal, those sorts of things. But I wonder if you might talk a little bit about, the industry itself. You're hiring people. I've had friends that have worked in the rendering industry. What do you look for as someone might be interested in this? Maybe a student is watching this and saying, that fascinates me. I'd like to be involved with the supply of ingredients for pet food. What would you tell that student?
That's a great story. I'm going to throw a story up that I was told is during World War II, our friends from Australia did a lot of canned lamb to feed the military. Only it wasn't lamb, it was mutton. And mutton has a very strong off flavor. So for decades, we couldn't get anyone to eat lamb in this country because the negative connotation, because they were something was mislabeled. And I think that's kind of similar to rendering. People that grew up in the country, they remember rendering plants, having a pretty strong odor, just like some farms that you may have after a rain event, you get a stronger odor. And it's not the most glamorous side of the business, but there are things we're really proud of. We do a voluntary testing program for safety called Animal Proteins Producers Industry is APPI, that we do voluntary testing, and we were the first, out way before FSMA was along. APPI, we were doing safety tests for potential pathogens and quality of product. We had a code of practice, which was a voluntary self-audit system, and we'd have third-party auditors come and do audits, again, way before FSMA came about. And we go into a lot of different industries: oleochemicals and lubricants, animal feeds, pet foods. There is human rendering. When we think about the lard or the tallow that you may cook with at home, that's rendered in the same fashion. It's just rendered through a little slightly different process. So all these things, go into. We think, while it may not seem to be the most glamorous, we're making good, nutritious products that are very useful. We have probably the best sustainability story of any ingredient out there. We are definitely fit into the entire biocircular economy of the food chain, and nothing gets wasted. It all gets repurposed and reutilized. And I think those stories are great. And we need good microbiologists and chemists and nutritionists engineers, and then we need a lot of really good tradesmen to run. A rendering plant is full of very large equipment, and so we're really working with trade schools and junior colleges and stuff to source people. But we're like the livestock industry. If you look at integrated companies, we have about every job under the sun, and we get to make healthy ingredients for pets and work with pet food companies, and that's a lot of fun. And then our sustainability story, I'm very, very proud of it, and that's one that's hard to beat by anyone else.
Well, the sustainability fits right in again as you think about what all these ingredients would be doing if they weren't put through this process to make the quality ingredients that can be used in pet food. Those ingredients would be waste and totally unsustainable. I had a little bit of thought that I think people might not. I often want to talk about the fun of having this kind of integrated team approach you're talking about. It's actually delightful to see that team work together and the sum of all of the activities being so successful. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you look for that team member. What if you wanted someone to be on a team you were leading, or maybe in one of these positions that you would be talking about, what would be the attributes of that individual that might, intrigue you or think, yes, this is a person to bring on?
Well, I'm not in HR, and so my ideals may be a little bit different than someone that's more competent in human resources. But work ethic. We work hard. We have a lot of fun, but we work hard in our industry, and that's across all of agriculture. Whether you're a crop farmer or animal producer, you have to be ready to work hard. And some days you stay until the job's done. And it's some days aren't fun, but spring's always fun when you get the new babies on the ground, and that makes it worth it. And so I think a positive personality. And I heard a quote the other day, a gentleman that's been in agriculture for many decades. We were having a discussion about hiring, and he said one thing that he was told early on when he was interviewing people is make sure they smile, because someone that doesn't smile might lead to problems. And I think that's linked to, you want people with a positive attitude.
Yeah.
Teamwork's a must. We do a lot of things via teamwork. It takes a lot of wheels to make the bus go. And we also do a lot of teamwork exercises across the industry. We have, there's a pet food alliance that was actually initiated by the renderers, but it's a open dialogue, and they fund research to solve quality and safety issues that happen with animal products that affect pet food producers. And so everybody from pet food and some packing and the rendering industry, they sit around tables, they figure out what the problem is and come up with some scientific solutions to solve them. And so teamwork is a must, I think, for any good role. And those are the kind of things I really look for. And, you don't have to have an ag background. When I was on faculty at Auburn, probably 50%, 60% of the students in animal and poultry sciences didn't come from a farm. And we've got fewer and fewer farms out there. But they were interested in, whether it was nutrition or physiology. They were willing to get in the research barns and work. And I think in ag, we always say you've got to enjoy getting dirty, because sometimes you do. And so willingness to do that, I think, is important as well.
Well, that makes lots of sense. Of course, you're describing an ideal candidate. I want to hire that person too, but those are all attributes of value, aren't they? So if you look back on your career, we're just kind of in that chat part, but I'm interested in this. Do you think there were individuals or unique situations that said, look, this is a career choice that makes sense to me? What can you think of any of those that really helped you out?
Oh, you caught me a little off guard. I'm not sure I can think of individuals making those decisions. I've made a couple in my career. I guess I went to a rendering company with no rendering background, and actually it was a role that was more regulatory related. One of the reasons I did that is regulations and policy are a very important part of our business that affect a lot of things we do, whether it's OSHA or EPA or FDA, CVM, or USDA. We have to abide by specific regulations, and
Sure.
so it was an opportunity for me. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I love to learn new things. And so that was an opportunity for me to learn a different side of the business, and an important one. And so I've made those choices in my career based off things like that. And I think the other thing that has helped me is I was always able and just very fortunate to have great mentors, and we encourage it. And I know there's mentorships within a lot of organizations. Reach out and help these new people and explain to them, the positives and the benefits, and help give them the tools they need to be successful, because it's easy to let someone fail. It takes a little work to help them be successful. And you always know the good leaders, because they're the ones who are the happiest when someone under them gets promoted upward and maybe even to a role that's above them. And those are the best leaders I've known throughout my career.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense. Thanks for sharing that with us. So I think I at least have a better understanding of this whole process, and I wonder, as we look back, we could say, well, look, we have a sustainability need, we have a pet nutrition need, and we have this ingredient flow that's coming through it that sort of bring these needs together, and that's the spot you're sitting in. We talked a little bit about how we can do that safely and with great assurance that the pet's getting an ingredient that's valuable, and then also about the people kind of in that mix. I don't know. Anything else coming to mind? I'm kind of thinking maybe we're at a place where we covered it.
Well, I just think there's always a lot of confusion sometimes, and everybody that has a pet, and I currently have 8 dogs outside that are playing, and we have hound dogs that my wife and I raise, and we love them as much as anyone else. And everybody wants their pet to be safe and healthy and have a long life, and I think that's important. And so whether you're making pet food or you're making pet food ingredients, there's kind of a joy to be had that you're adding to the health of people's companions and making it safe and high quality for everyone. So, and on our side, the sustainability story rolls right in with that. And so I think there's a very good overall feeling when you can supply a safe, nutritious product that it helps the environment and the planet, and it helps pet food people, producers make a very nutritious product at the end. But it all takes teamwork. It's from the packing and processing plants through the rendering process, and then working hand in hand with the pet food guys. And that's also what kind of makes it fun. You get to see the whole chain of the life cycle of that product, and then it goes back and gets repurposed at the end. So that's what brought me back to rendering, I think.
No, well, thank you. That's it's a great life vocational story. So I'm pleased to hear it, and I do hope that as people learn about it, they'll be more interested, perhaps attracted to a career in this industry, because, like you said, it's not one that meets the first blush of you're coming in as a prospective employee, and you're thinking, well, I really would like to do that. But when you learn about it and you think, yes, here's a way to enhance the sustainability of our environment, and then to lengthen and enrich a special relationship between people and their pets, words that flow off me pretty easily, but it requires quality ingredients. And so the value in providing that and working in that chain seems very significant to me. So I hope I can, sort of promote that a bit as people think about it, because it's a good place. It's a good place to be.
Well, and you've been in touch with the industry for a while, just as I have. I'm
Yeah, my
biased, of
age
course,
shows,
but
doesn't it?
we have the best people in our industry. We have the best people in our industry, and the relationships you build, and agricultural industries in general. It's a very small world, and it's a big family, and so I think it's a great place. And we just both pet food struggles and rendering struggles, and we need to get the word out there more about the opportunities. Young people, and I know this from my days at Auburn, they aren't always aware of all those opportunities, and so we just have to continue to go out and speak to groups and of young people, and FFA and 4-H and universities and other schools, and try to get that word out there about the opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful because, again, you don't see it in a Hollywood movie. It's like whatever the social sort of setting for that ultimate job is, doesn't get into pet food ingredients. But when you actually learn about it, and many people say that. Actually, you fascinate me by that, because a constant theme through this podcast is people saying, we really work in a community that I like, that's mutually supportive and accepting, and that strong capacity of that teamwork. And maybe we see the requirements for the interconnection. I'm a nutritionist, but I need ingredient suppliers, and I need manufacturers, and that whole team together. Expertise I don't have, right? I know I don't have that expertise, but other people do. And so that's the value of bringing that team together you spoke of.
Absolutely. And today's rendering, I mean, the plants being built are much more sophisticated. The equipment and process has come a long way. Odor abatement. I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's 4 billion or trillion gallons. We have a lot of infographics on our website, but billions of gallons of water are cleaned through our process. Because, like I said, we're cooking 60% water out of this material, and we have to clean that and apply it back to the environment, and after it's been cleaned and treated. So there's just great opportunities for environmental engineers and chemists and everything. And it's not just rendering; it's pet food does the same with their process, and the livestock industry does the same as well. And you'll see people that kind of go back and forth between those three some, and
Yes.
enjoy learning about the different aspects.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Dr. Starkey, for our interesting conversation and the time together. I hope that we can stay in touch. That this is an ongoing discussion, and I know there's areas we didn't talk about, and maybe another time we can talk a little bit about the regulatory aspects, maybe some about the way we might reach people with the story that really is so important. But another discussion. So thank you today. Thanks again for our conversation.